Alright guys, so today we're going to talk about some really basic JavaScript forms as a way of introducing JavaScript, which is a programming language. So our learning objective is really just a basic comprehension of the logic behind some of that structure. So don't be intimidated, we're not going to be programming, we're not going to be using code, we're not going to be doing anything with something like this. We're just talking about how we have to think about it. So JavaScript is one of the top three really most popular programming languages. The other two, HTML and CSS, those are used to build structure. So they're sort of used to build the bones of a website. JavaScript is used to build animation and interaction with a website. So the point of JavaScript is really to take a user's actions and then through code provide some kind of reaction. So just the way that in this simple example we see that this website is giving us a prompt to enter a number and then enter 3 names. So the code that's behind this is comparing the names to that number and then sending us back these responses. So it's interacting with us as a user. So we're not going to think about the code at all. We're not going to worry about that. We're just going to think about if we wanted something like this to happen, what are the steps that we would need to go through in order to get this reaction? So the first thing we would need to do is we have to save that information. So the things that we're entering into that field, into that form, we don't just want those to disappear. We don't, once we click the submit button, we don't just want the fields to clear. We need to hang on to that information. So we need to collect it. The next thing we need to do is we need to tell our code what to look for. So we need to tell it what we want it to do. So what we want it to do is we want to compare the number of characters in each name with the number that they entered. So we need to say, okay, let's take this first field. This is the number that we want to compare things to. And then the names that we're entering, let's put those in a list so that we can look through them easily. And then let's figure out how they relate to each other. So all of these are just pieces of code, lines and sections where we're telling JavaScript what we want it to do. And then we tell it what to do after. So after it's found these relationships and done the calculations, which it's going to take all of a millisecond to do, then it's going to return these different responses and we tell it what we want it to say. So if it's equal or greater than the number, it returns a certain response. If it's less than the number, it returns a different response. So to recap, all we're doing here is we're saving the information. So we're telling the code what to look for. We're creating a system so that it can do that looking. And then we're telling it how to react once it finds that answer. So how to interact with the user. So even though ultimately it's going to look like this, what's really the most important piece here is that logic. So in order for us to go through those steps, that's the first step before we can do any of this coding. So I hope you guys learned a little bit about JavaScript. And if you ever do get into coding, at least you know a little bit about what goes on behind it and before you get started.